It's official. I've got all my girlfriends hooked on BAREFACED toning pads. I knew they'd be thanking me once they tried these powerhouse treatment pads that are packed with skincare acids, antioxidants, and hydrating ingredients to tackle dullness, rough texture, and breakouts. They enhance the performance of all my other products, and I've noticed my makeup just goes on a little more smoothly. If you're ready to switch up your skincare routine, try pairing them with Overachiever, BAREFACED 10-in-1 serum for a simple but effective routine. Don't forget to grab 15% off your first order with the code MOMMA15, that's MOMMA 15 at barefaced.com. Whenever Tucker and I go for a walk at the park, people always comment on his beautiful coat. He is a handsome boy. We bathe him in the Coat Defense Sensitive Skin Shampoo, and it really helps to keep his coat soft, shiny, and fresh. In between, we use the Coat Defense Daily Preventative Powder. This powder acts as a dry shampoo and actually repels dirt, and it eliminates odor. It comes in a refillable, convenient shaker, and Tucker gets so excited when it's time for his brush and his powder. He stays cleaner, fresher, and I'm just a happier dog mama thanks to Coat Defense. Try it out and let me know what you think. You can visit coatdefense.com and receive 15% off your purchase when you use the code MOMMA15. That's MOMMA 15. Get ready to be inspired by Megan Alexander. Megan is a national television correspondent for Inside Edition, an author, an actress, and always up for the next challenge. She's a mother of 3 and just oozes positivity. We've shared red carpets and big interviews in the world of entertainment, but we've never had the opportunity to just sit down and chat. So come along as we both get to know the lovely Megan Alexander. I'm so glad you're over at my house today.
Thank you, Jennifer. It's beautiful. Wonderful to be here.
Oh, thank you so much. I was thinking this morning about what's going to be great about this conversation is even though we've kind of run in the same circle, have so many mutual friends, have somewhat similar backgrounds, yours is way more interesting, but we don't really know each other. So to get to actually just sit down and kind of have a girlfriend to girlfriend, mom to mom conversation will be really special.
Yes.
So how long have you lived in Nashville?
So I came to Nashville right out of college,
Oh.
which was 2003 to 2005.
Okay.
Lived here for 2 years, packed up my car. I wanted to go to Belmont.
Oh, you
I grew up in
did?
Seattle, and my parents said that's too far. There's great colleges on the West Coast. The furthest you can go is California.
Okay.
So I picked Westmont, which is a wonderful, small Christian liberal arts school. But the day I graduated, my roommate and I packed up the car and I drove her to Denver, and then I continued on to Nashville. So by
Really?
golly, it took me 4 years, but I got there.
Oh my goodness. So college was in California.
Yeah.
But then you just kind of never let go of that wanting to be in Nashville.
Never let go of it. And my first night here, I parked my car in the parking lot of the Grand Ole Opry and spent the night in my car. So I could say my first night in Nashville, I spent the night in my car at the Grand Ole Opry. My mom was horrified when I told her that story. She's like, you could have afforded a hotel. I said, I know, but I just wanted to have my first night there.
Had you ever been there?
Yes.
Okay. So you had visited the
come to
Opry.
visit. Yeah. My grandma was born in Thompson Station in 1930 on my dad's side.
Oh.
And all we have is a birth certificate. She was born in a house, and we have the doctor's name on the birth certificate, a Spring Hill doctor. So there's a fun sort of investigation going on in my family to find maybe some cousins out there that I don't even know.
Yeah.
But we did have roots here, but they quickly moved to Florida and then eventually Seattle. So
Okay.
the family roots were in the 30s, and we're still kind of figuring all that out.
So what was the draw to Nashville growing up? You didn't know at the time, that you knew you had a grandmother who was from here,
Yes.
but was it country music? What was
Yes.
the dream?
It was country music, watching the Country Music Awards on my mom's bed growing up. My parents have always loved country music. And believe it or not, country music has a huge following in Seattle. We had a couple powerhouse radio stations there for a long time. So I grew up hearing country music and learned to play the guitar in school. Music has always been a big part of my life. My aunt plays the accordion, piano, organ. Very musical family that loved country music in Seattle. And I just thought, gosh, I would love to go there or New York or LA with wanting to work in entertainment, and just kept hearing about Nashville and knowing my grandma was born there. I thought, gosh, I'd love to just explore it.
Yeah.
But again, I had parents that thought, well, that's sweet, but stay on the West Coast.
Yeah, no, I get that.
And now here we all are.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
be careful what you wish for.
And as a mom of 3, I'm sure now if let's say your oldest son came to you and was like, okay, I want to go to school in California or whatever, you're
Yeah.
going to get that tug of, of, okay, I want you to follow your dream, but yeah,
yes.
that's what's hard for sure. Yeah. So the entertainment reporter thing, or covering that industry, or even being on camera or being a reporter, was that a young dream, or how did that come about?
Yeah, I knew I wanted to do something in entertainment, something in this industry. And like I said, performed in church, sang in the choir. I was in all the plays growing up and just had a really sweet, fun childhood. But I went to a radio station in kindergarten and watched them talking in the microphone and reporting on the songs of the day and covering all the music. And I don't remember this, but the kindergarten teacher said that they said, does anyone want to talk on the microphone? And I raised my hand and went up and talked on the microphone as a 5-year-old. So I guess I was bit by that bug early. And then really, when I moved to Nashville, I pursued country music, but to pay the bills, I started working as a traffic and weather reporter on the radio for a company called Metro Networks.
Oh, wow.
That doesn't exist anymore.
The first broadcasting foray.
It was the first broadcasting job, did a couple of different internships in college and realized, okay, maybe this is my foot in the door and how I can pay the bills.
Yeah, but you wanted to actually be a performer. You wanted to sing and be a part of the country music industry on the performance side.
Yes, or acting. I was always acting too, took classes my whole life. And so I thought one of the two, something would pop.
Yeah, that's really special. You are married to your high school sweetheart, is that right?
So we met when I was 12 and he was 13. We went to different schools and didn't start dating until our 20s. So I went to college, thought I would meet my husband, didn't meet anybody, came home one summer and went, oh, well, Brian looks great.
Actually, he's a good choice.
That's a longer story. But yeah, we met at 12 and 13, but didn't date until our 20s.
Oh, that's so cute. So you were already in Nashville then when you guys met, because it was after college.
Correct.
Okay. And then what's kind of his story? Where was he from?
So he was a firefighter in Seattle right after high school. He entered the fire department and served for a couple of years, loved that job, but got an opportunity to go to Houston, Texas for a business job. And so we started dating when he was a Texan and I was a Tennessean. And that was fun because there's a lot of similarities between the two states.
For sure.
So, and we both always said it would be neat to move here and raise our family someday.
And he liked Nashville as well.
He loved Nashville, but New York City came calling for about 8 years in between that. So we did do the New York thing, but then eventually got back to Tennessee.
I read that you were a political science major. Mm-hmm. What was the decision for that with being a creative, having the artist bug in you? Yeah. How are you thinking you would use that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there was no entertainment track at my college. The media track was very philosophical, public speaking, rhetorical, theological, if you will. So in terms of the creative, there weren't a lot of options at this Christian liberal arts school that I ended up going to. And so I thought, well, I'm fascinated by culture and government and leadership. So I thought I'd like to study that, thinking that maybe there was an opportunity to cover that, whether as a reporter or even, thought it's just interesting to see people debate and participated in some debates. And I did it, Jennifer, and I did an internship in Washington, D.C. my junior year at American University, interned for United States Senator. And I found myself going, well, what do you do for fun? Like, what are your favorite movies? And somebody said to me, I think you'd be better fit in entertainment than in politics. So with that degree under my belt, I quickly pivoted back to entertainment.
Yeah. And it's not an unusual degree for someone who is a reporter or covers the news or that type of thing. But I knew that if you had that bug in you, and similarly, like I wanted to work in local TV news, but I just wasn't the person in the newsroom in the morning in the, where we're handing out everybody's assignments and determining who's going to do what. I never was the one really fighting for the lead story. I wanted to go tell the entertainment, the kicker is what we called them at the time, kind of the fun story, the human interest, that was kind of where I was. And that's what led to, well, I really should probably just be focusing on entertainment because that's what fills me, just good storytelling.
I agree. I do think, politics does fascinate me, culture, business, just the world in general. Yeah. And so it was fun to study governments and learn more about our government and world governments. I will say it was great meat to study. I felt like it was a interesting major to have, and it certainly applies to just regular life, talking about issues and being able to just discuss things of the day.
Right. What would you consider your kind of break into going from being a traffic reporter? I mean, what was your big break to get to I guess, categorize yourself as an entertainment reporter?
Yeah, so at Metro Networks, I had the best boss. Shout out to Michael Higgins. He's still out there, and he was just fantastic. I worked for him for 2 years in Nashville, and he was the kind of boss that you would dream about, where he would want to hear what your goals and aspirations were. What do you want to do? And he came to me once at my desk, and he knew I was interested in just pursuing something, in the entertainment industry. And he said, how would you feel about being a television reporter for a morning show? And I said, yeah, that sounds interesting. He said, San Antonio, Texas, Ken's 5, the CBS affiliate down there, is looking for a morning traffic reporter on the morning news. But then they also have this talk show called Great Day San Antonio, and they would want the person to do both. And he said, I went ahead and sent him your tape. I was like, oh, thank you, Michael. And he said, they're interested. Would you like to fly down there and meet with them? I'll connect the dots for you. And I said, yeah. So thank you, Michael. Michael was the one that saw that, a opportunity for me. I flew down there. I didn't really want to leave Nashville, but, I had the conversation with my parents. It's time to get the big girl job, the full-time job, pay the bills, get insurance, all those things in your early 20s. And so flew down there and auditioned for it and got it. And that was my break.
Oh, wow.
I covered traffic in the morning. I filled in for the morning news anchor. I reported on Great Day San Antonio. They occasionally had me fill in the evenings. Phenomenal 3 years with another fantastic boss, Kurt Davis, who I owe a lot to.
And what was the next step after San Antonio? Was that Inside Edition?
Yes. So San Antonio for 3 years, again, did everything at that station. My husband and I got engaged. We were like, we're going to be Texans for life. We love this city. And I heard that Inside Edition was looking for 2 reporters. I heard they were looking for an LA correspondent and somebody in New York. And at the time, my husband and I are both from Seattle. We're getting married. And I thought I should send my reel to them and see if I could get the LA job. And our parents are cheering for us to come back to the West Coast. And so I had an agent at the time that sent them my reel, even though the agent was very discouraging and told me I was not their type and I was wasting my time to send my reel. And I tell young people that story because if you feel in your gut you're supposed to send it, you should. And you need to just listen to yourself and sometimes ignore other people's opinions. Because if I'd listened to that agent, I would have never sent it. But 24 hours later, my agent called me and said, what do I know? They want to fly you to New York.
Wow.
Flew me to New York, met with my boss at Inside Edition, Charles Lockman, phenomenal man. And he said, I don't want you in LA. I want you in New York, where the mothership is. It's where the show is put together. Our headquarters is New York City. And I walked out of there and called my husband and said, I think we're supposed to be in New York City. And Jennifer, he had just bought a brand new Ford F-250 truck. And he was like, how am I going to drive that through the streets of Manhattan? And by golly, we did. We sold my Mustang and moved to New York City with this gigantic Ford truck.
Yes. And we would be remiss not to mention that today, I believe you pulled up in a big truck as well, right?
Yeah.
Is that your personal car?
Yeah, that's our truck. Yeah.
Oh, that's so fun.
But it was an even bigger truck that we moved to Manhattan. And
2,500 is huge.
Oh my gosh. And parking was a challenge
the
every
fact
single
that
day.
Most people move to Manhattan and just don't even have a car.
I
And
know.
here you are with like the biggest makeup truck.
He had just bought it. I was like, I can't make him sell it. So we brought it. That was our one car in
How long
Manhattan.
did you live in Manhattan?
We were in Manhattan 2008 to 2013.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have kids at that
We
time?
did. Our oldest, Chase, was born there and lived there until age 2.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you were raising a baby, starting your family, living in New York, full time with Inside Edition.
Full time with Inside Edition, putting that baby in the stroller on the subway. It is possible.
Oh my goodness. Wow. What an interesting way to kind of begin your family life too. Yeah.
It
and
was
it's
wild.
So vastly different than how you guys have chosen to raise your family now.
Yes. And for all the excitement and energy of New York City, it's also a lonely place. I found myself a little bit lonely as a young mother because it's so fast paced. It's hard to slow down and savor the moments that I think I do now in life.
Yeah.
So it was a whirlwind of a couple years and it had its ups and downs. You know, I mean, that's again, a very fun, exciting place to be, but it's also with so many people swirling around you, it's easy to feel lost.
Yeah, for sure. So several years ago, you wrote a book called Faith in the Spotlight where you shared your story. And I think that that is where I am particularly fascinated with you and your story in a standpoint coming from a viewpoint of someone who's worked really hard to stay true to myself, my values matter, and in a world of media and the way that things, have evolved and are covered, and being non-biased, but still trying to stay true to who you are, it can be a real challenge.
Yeah.
And you were working for, Inside Edition, which some people might say, okay, there's some sensational stuff here. There's some, which you could pull that out of a lot of different shows and networks.
Sure.
But I would imagine the challenge for you has been even greater. So I'm just kind of curious to hear how on that big of a platform you've been able to do that. Whenever Tucker and I go for a walk at the park, people always comment on his beautiful coat. He is a handsome boy. We bathe him in the Coat Defense Sensitive Skin Shampoo, and it really helps to keep his coat soft, shiny, and fresh. In between, we use the Coat Defense Daily Preventative Powder. This powder acts as a dry shampoo and actually repels dirt, and it eliminates odor. It comes in a refillable, convenient shaker, and Tucker gets so excited when it's time for his brush and his powder. He stays cleaner, fresher, and I'm just a happier dog mama thanks to Coat Defense. Try it out and let me know what you think. You can visit coatdefense.com and receive 15% off your purchase when you use the code MOMMA15. That's MOMMA 15.
Well, I'll tell you what, there is no, at least I never found a book that prepares you for what it's like to be on a show like that or in the industry that you and I are in. In fact, I was looking for it myself. Like, what do you do as a believer when you're assigned a story that may compromise with your values or you're being asked to discuss a topic? I mean, I was sent once to the Howard Stern show to cover an interview with a bunch of different people. And I just thought, what am I doing? I wouldn't normally be listening to Howard Stern myself. And I know people love him, but
I have a Howard Stern story as well.
Okay.
Remind me to tell you that one probably off camera.
Okay.
But yeah, that was one of those that, whoa, okay, how did my name get in the mix of that? But go ahead.
Yes. Yeah, just all those things where it's so fast paced and so crazy, and you want to do a good job and please your boss and deliver for the people around you. But I just got in the habit of saying, okay, Lord, just may it weigh very heavy on my heart if I'm supposed to take a bold step for you. I don't know how this is all going to play out, so please just let me know. And through my whole career, he has always let me know and always just given me that like gut feeling that I need to say something, or I've been peaceful. And then I've thought, I'm not supposed to say anything. I'm just supposed to put my head down and do good work. So with Inside Edition, I just focused on being a great reporter. I wanted to be there for my colleagues, make deadline, hustle like the best of them, and just deliver for my boss. And I think that helped me because when I did eventually talk about my faith and write my book, I really believe that a lot of my colleagues went, oh, well, that's just Megan. Just like I have a hobby or maybe what would you say, a platform that's really important to me, like saving the whales or just whatever. Her faith is important to her. I honestly believe people kind of just saw me that way. Like, okay, that's great, but she'll also make deadline and deliver for us. And so, I was walking in Central Park, and my husband and I were just kind of laying low and doing our thing in New York City. We were going to church. We'd found a good group of friends. But again, I hadn't really felt like I should be super open about my faith yet. And I got a phone call from a female pastor in New York City, and she said, hey, Megan, I just got a phone call from the lady who's the publisher of a magazine, a national magazine, and she wants to put someone on the cover who waited until marriage to be with her husband and is a believer. And she said she can't find anybody in the entertainment industry, but I mentioned you. She's like, because that female pastor knew our story, Brian and I's story. And she said, would you want to share your story and be on the cover of this magazine? And I said, well, I'm one half of this decision, so let me talk to my husband and I'll get back to you. And so I called Brian and we talked about it, and he said, well, if it encourages one person, it's worth it. What do you think? Should we go for it? I was like, sure. So I did this whole interview and we talked about our story and our faith, and it went on the magazine, and that magazine led to a conversation with Simon & Schuster and their Christian books division, which was called Howard at the time. Mm-hmm. And they said, we'd like you to write a book. Because it was getting attention and I was getting interviews over it. Yeah. I think more from just the shock of people still believe in that.
Yeah, the purity issue. Of,
right. Like, really? People still believe that?
Again, it led to and gave you a bigger platform to be able to share your faith, no matter even if that was the impetus for how it all began.
Totally.
You were able to share your faith. And, my other takeaway in you sharing your story is that I love what you said about how you prayed beforehand of almost like, go before me, on this path, help me to know when I need to speak up about something or maybe not accept an assignment. But I think there's a message in there that pre-prayer can be really important before we get ourselves into situations that are going to be either hard to get out of or have consequences because of how you're handling it.
Yeah.
And so I think that is, and that he does care about those details.
Yeah.
And that not that you're not going to have tough decisions to make. Do you remember being faced with a story that you were, this isn't me. This one's hard for me to cover in an unbiased way, for example. Were you put in those positions beforehand?
Yes, there's a couple that come to mind. One of them goes way back to San Antonio, Texas, and it's a longer story, but I'll try to summarize it as quick as possible. When I first came on that morning show, Great Day San Antonio, it's live TV. You've done live TV, where anything you say is out there and it's out there forever.
There's no erasing.
You can cut to commercial break, but that doesn't always save you, right? And this show that I stepped into, there was a very popular segment with a local psychic. He would come on the show and people would call in with their questions about finances, asking him to communicate with dead relatives, find them true love, read the signs and stars. It was so popular in San Antonio. And I went back to my executive producer at the time and we were kind of tossing out ideas. And I said, have you ever thought about doing that segment with a pastor? Like, I understand the pull to do a psychic, but have you ever thought about having a pastor give out that advice and wisdom? And he said to me, Megan, we don't do religion on this show. Next. And he totally shot me down in the room. And I kind of went, oh, well, okay, Lord, I felt you calling me to say something and that didn't work out. And now I feel kind of silly. I'm the new girl on the block. And a couple weeks went by and that executive producer needed to fill 5 minutes because, when you have to fill time, you've got to figure out a segment. We'd had a last minute cancellation on the show, Great Day San Antonio. And he said, does anybody have any ideas? And I just felt my heart beating, God saying, raise your hand again. So I raised my hand in the room with everybody. And I said, what about bringing on a pastor? Max Lucado lives down the street in San Antonio. If anyone's familiar with him, incredible author, pastor, very down-to-earth public
super
speaker.
Important voice for our,
Very important voice and very accessible, I would say. And I think the executive producer at that point was exasperated with me. So he said, fine, Megan, if he's available, I'll consider it. And so I was so excited, but then I realized I had to really call him and book him. So I went back to my desk, picked up the phone, called Oak Hills Church in San Antonio. I'll never forget it. His secretary answered the phone and looked at the date and said, yes, he's in town. He'd love to. Went back to my producer, said he's available. Let's do this. He came on the show. I did the interview with him. People called in, asked him similar questions that they had asked the psychic in the earlier segment. And Max Lucado answered in such a lovely, way as a pastor that, was trying to give good advice. And I thought the segment went great, but you and I both know all that matters is the ratings. Were people tuning in? Did they tune out? And the next day, I tell people, I looked at those ratings and it was the highest rated show we had had all year. And that executive producer that told me we don't do religion looked at those ratings and came to me and said, I want to book him regularly on the show.
Wow.
So I tell people, I don't blame the executive producer because I found out later he had had a issue with the church in his life as a young man and was working through that. He'd had a bad impression. Second, ratings are king. So sometimes you need to prove it. Sometimes you need to do the work to hustle and creatively approach how this could go well. And when I left San Antonio after 3 years, they were talking to him even about having a TV show connected to the station. So I just tell people, don't be discouraged. It's never a complete shut door, but that's an example. And then similar situations happened at Inside Edition where I'd initially get shot down with an idea.
Yeah.
And then I'd approach it creatively and come back around and say, hey, what about this? What about that? I mean, I can just share one more with you if you want me to.
Yeah.
When God's Not Dead came out, the very first one, I believe it was like 2014 or 2015. I know a lot of the producers on that show. I know David A.R. White. I played his wife in another movie called Redeemed. And they all said, hey, this movie's coming out. We'd love for the media to cover it. And in mainstream media, nobody cared. They were like, who are these people? What's this movie, God's Not Dead? no, next. And I knew it was going to be amazing. I'm like, the Newsboys are going to be in it. I really think it's going to be a big deal. If you know the story, small budget, does amazing at the box office, like goes number one, and it's in the New York Times. And my boss Monday morning is reading the New York Times, and he always calls out in the newsroom, this person, you take this story, you take this story. And he goes, did anybody see this God's Not Dead this weekend? Crickets in the newsroom, except for me. I raised my hand and I went, I did. And he's like, Megan, can you get to this Kevin Sorbo that played Hercules that's in that movie? I said, sure. Made it happen, got an interview. Sometimes you just have to be in the right place at the right time, raise your hand when you feel God calling you to, and be patient to connect those dots. And, you know, the continuation of that story is my boss realized that there's a huge faith audience out there that's showing up for these films. Let's not forget about them. And I think in general, the world is waking up to that.
Yeah, no, that's great. And the great examples of just kind of being not only bold, but persistent too. I think with both of those scenarios. And the other thing, and I'll tell, you know, young girls this too, and it was part of my experience in high school, but I just kind of, people knew like, okay, she's not going to drink at the party. She's not going to this or that. But it helped me because I was bold in my faith without being, you know, a goody two shoes or whatever. But because that was the reputation I had worked hard to build, I didn't get tempted with a lot of things that I feel like other people did who were wishy-washy or kind of, you know, in the middle of, I'm not sure how I feel about this or that. But by taking a stand, I think it helped me to maybe not have some of the high school temptations or even in college that other people may have had. And I feel like that translates even to the newsroom. If there is a story about faith or there is, you know, you're probably the go-to girl because you're going to enjoy the assignment and, you know, relate to it in some way, which is really awesome.
That is so true. And you really realize that all of your experiences in life, everybody brings something to the table, right? And I have to say that I'm appreciative of colleagues that are not religious in the office that have asked me interesting questions and reminded me that I need to know what I'm talking about and be able to defend my faith and also listen to them and their stories. I've often found, Jennifer, that I don't think there's a grand conspiracy to keep faith out of the media. I just think it has so fallen away from people's lives. And on the weekend, when people ask each other in New York, what did you do? It's brunch and parties and maybe going to plays. And when I say, oh, I went to church on Sunday, they're like, wait, that's something my great grandma did. You really still go to church? It has so slipped away from being a part of their life. But when you get to know them and their story, it's like, okay, well, let's just keep planting seeds and having conversations and even just being someone that reminds them church can be for young people too.
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
A lot of listening has really blessed my life by just knowing where people are coming from.
And I think that being people of faith and covering this industry, it's just so awesome to see the resurgence of faith-based content, and films are doing great. You know, this is a faith-based podcast. It does great. Like, I'm just so thankful that people are open and hungry for positive messages. I think that's so, so important. And of course, you have been able to be a part of some amazing projects yourself. So aside from being correspondent with Inside Edition and all of the really cool things that you've been able to cover, I want to hear about like the acting side and some of the movie things you've gotten to do. And has your role as a reporter, is that what's led to the others, or do you have a separate agent that helps you find acting roles and you almost separate those two sides of your job?
Yeah, well, I think they're all very connected because it is a small world at the end of the day. And so it's been relationships and people, you know, talking to people and being available for those opportunities. And also realizing that they're not going to come at the most perfect moment. So I got a call to be in a movie called Heartbeats. Did you watch any of the Step Up movies with Channing Tatum?
Oh, no, I know what you're talking about. Okay. No, I haven't seen those.
All those fun dance movies, Step Up, Honey, all them. So they were directed by a man named Dwayne Adler, who's an incredible director in Hollywood. So through some friends in the business, I had heard about a movie called Heartbeats because I got a phone call that they were filming this love story between a boy from India and a girl from LA who fall in love in an Indian wedding in Mumbai, India. And Indian weddings are like 7 days long. It's this
huge
incredible celebration. And then the movie would end with a dance competition, and they were looking for somebody to be their final judge. They wanted their Simon Cowell, their Paula Abdul, their Randy Jackson, obviously played by other people, but I was essentially the female judge that they wanted, and they wanted somebody in entertainment. So in a way, yes, it was connected.
Yeah, for sure.
Because they said, let's get Megan, from Inside Edition, even though I kind of played myself, but I didn't really represent the show. And I had just given birth to Catcher. My middle son was like 3.5, 4 months old. And I got the call to fly to India. And I just thought, okay. But when you get the call, are you willing to go? And I talked to my husband and he's like, go. And I was only there for about 5 days, but it's not always going to be the right timing, right? And my in-laws, God bless them, came and flew in to help with the baby.
I love that you talk about kind of that motherhood pull of I've got this baby, but I have this opportunity. And have there been things through the journey of motherhood that you've had to turn down because it just wasn't the right decision for your family?
Sure.
I'd love to hear more about kind of how you balance that part of it.
Sure. Probably the biggest moment for me was when I went part-time with Inside Edition. And that came from an opportunity to cover Thursday Night Football. I covered it for 2 seasons on CBS when CBS had Thursday Night Football. It was 2014 and 2015.
Yeah.
That I had just gone, I went part-time with Inside Edition for that. And that was only a fall gig because football is only in the fall. But then a
dream gig, though, for sure.
A dream
I would
gig.
Love that.
It was so fun. It was like studying for a college final before every game, though, Jennifer. And I love
can't
football.
Imagine.
But I was just like, this is the hardest job ever.
No, there has got to be. It's not just a pretty face. There's got to be some knowledge.
Yes.
The worst thing would be looking stupid covering the NFL, right?
Yeah. And I did it with Jim Nance and Phil Simms. Tony Romo has taken over Phil Simms' job now. But I chatted with Jim Nance about it when we first started, and he said, Megan, we are never prepared enough. He said, you can never read enough. You can never watch enough tape, study enough. He said, you just have to get to the point where you're like, I'm good enough to do this. Yeah. And hearing him say that, I was like, okay, that's Jim Nance, like extraordinaire sportscaster. So he's the forever student. But doing that, there was a question of, should I try to go back full-time with Inside Edition or should I stay part-time? Mm-hmm. And that was a conversation with my husband where I really felt like, no, I need to make more space for the kids. Yeah. And so that was a moment for me about 2015 where I think I could have pivoted and like taken on way more and just run myself into the ground. But I stayed part-time, and that was a beautiful thing to slow down and go, okay, I got to step back and really balance here. Mm-hmm. And that, it's hard to do. I mean, like me, love your family, but you also love your job. It's this eternal just wrestling game, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's things, even, at this point of just looking back, I'm like, I would have loved to have done that. Or if I had just pursued this, but I was right where I needed to be at the time where I needed to be.
Yeah.
And so, and it's interesting. And now kind of figuring out what does this next stage look like? I'm just ahead of you and my kids are launched and, doing their own things and all of that. And so then you kind of focus back on, but it was very important to me. And I'm sure you can relate to this too. All throughout raising my kids, I kept my foot in the door of my career because I didn't want to get to this point right now and be like, oh, well, how do I get back into doing what I always loved? So in some way, shape, or form, I tried to stay attached to or like not let people forget about me. I
think that's really smart. I think we have to do that in our business.
Yeah. You're so fortunate because your husband has played a huge role in you being able to do what you do because you're still, I mean, we want people to know you're still going back to New York every month. Yeah. You're still working for Inside Edition along with many, many other projects. But how in the world do you raise 3 kids, live in Nashville, fly back and forth from New York? And not just New York, I'm sure you're on assignment a lot too.
Yeah. Well, in 2013, when I went part-time with Inside Edition and did the first season of Thursday Night Football, my husband and I talked about it and we said, okay, could I do this from somewhere else? Could I fly to the games from somewhere other than Manhattan? And so in between those 2 years, we made the decision to move to Nashville. Okay. And my dad, God bless him, actually came up with the idea. He was like, what if you tried to commute? And we looked at the map and we said, it's either Nashville or Charlotte, North Carolina, are the 2 cities that are closest, have direct flights pretty consistently. And we have no roots in Charlotte, but we have roots in Nashville. And I've always loved this city. So we said, let's try it for 6 months. And that was 2013. So how many years later? 15 years later.
Yeah, a lot.
It worked out. But that was a leap of faith in 2013. I would fly Monday morning to New York and come back Wednesday night on the latest flight. And then be here in Nashville Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And that was dipping the toe in the water, and it worked. And I will be totally honest with everybody. My kids have been in daycare since about 2.5 months old. We've always found amazing daycares, and that's worked for us. We've never had a nanny, but daycare has been great because of the notes you get from the teachers, and you can check on the cameras from no matter where
it's
you
changed
are.
So much, yeah.
It's been a really wonderful community for us. I've met other working moms that way. So that has been a big key to it. And then all of the parents too have helped too.
Yeah, that's really awesome. You guys have supportive parents.
Yeah.
What is your advice to other moms? I know there's so many moms who struggle and they don't have what people perceive maybe as you having a glamorous job. We know you work your tail off, but
you do.
It's the job that a lot of people would think is, oh wow, that must be fun for her. But just the average working mom that just struggles with, not being home with the kids and trying to fulfill a career. For so many, it's paying the bills.
Yes,
it's not just, soul fulfillment. It's the bread on the table. So that guilt that, moms can deal with.
No, it has paid the bills for us. I mean, I will be totally honest, and my husband will be too. My job at one point was the one that was, keeping everything humming. I carry the insurance, through my industry. So it was necessary. And I feel like we're in a place now where that's really acceptable and really normal. But every now and then there are conversations where people would say, gosh, it must be really hard for you to be away from home. Or every now and then, not that often, but every now and then I'd have somebody say to Brian, well, are you okay with this? Are you okay with Megan traveling? And he's like, yeah, I'm grateful,
Yeah.
But I feel like we're pretty much over that now. But, I think you just have to really go, how are we doing?
Yeah.
Me and Brian continually talking and going, how are we doing? Is this the right decision for our family? How do we feel about this? And then every now and then I try to bring the family with me, bring them to New York City or bring them to a Super Bowl when I'm covering an event or something, bring the kids on set to let them see this is mommy's world. This is her job.
Yeah.
Right. I think just normalizing it as much as you can and also having a support system of other working mothers too is huge. But I love it, Jennifer. Like I honestly am sitting here with you going, I'm really grateful.
Yeah, when you get to actually take a minute and step back and kind of walk through your careers and what's led to this and that and the other, I mean, it's kind of a special time to stop and go, wow, I'm so blessed. Yeah, I think you just have to do what's good for you. Like even you, I love your vulnerability saying daycare is what worked for our family, where other people would be like, oh, you put your kids in daycare? Like, wow. But it's what worked for your family. You had a positive experience. Your kids are great kids at the end of the day.
They're very social.
Yes, I'm sure they are. So one of the things that people watching or listening might be thinking, Megan, is she the girl that's kind of synonymous with Christmas? I mean, that's a compliment though, right?
Yes. Oh, I hope so. Yeah.
So on Up TV, was that the original home for the
Yes.
show? You are able to host a show called Small Town Christmas.
Yeah.
Tell me about the concept. Was it yours or is this a show that you were invited to come host or did you create this?
Yes. So during COVID, like so many people, as we're all inside our houses and feeling stir crazy, I just said to my husband, once this thing lifts, I want to do a travel show where we find all the small towns in America that put on these darling little Christmas celebrations and really celebrate the true essence of the season, family, community, faith. And I told him, I want to call it Small Town Christmas, and it's going to be like a holiday travel show. And so I did it. I put it together myself. I looked around if anybody was doing it, and I couldn't find anything. And so I thought, well, I'm going to do it myself, put together the concept, went and filmed the trailer. We went to Pigeon Forge for 4 days and put together the sizzle reel, if you will.
Is this you and your husband working on this project?
No. Brian's in real estate. He's not in entertainment at all. He just listens to the ideas.
The ideas off of him.
He gives me the yay or nay. No, I hired the crew, went to Pigeon Forge, filmed the sizzle, and then pitched it around to different networks. And a couple were interested, but Up TV said, we love it. And that was like in September. So we turned it very quickly the first season. And what our concept is, we go to small towns. We went to 4 in season 1, 4 in season 2, and then I did 2 in season 3, 30-minute episodes. And we just literally run through the town and capture all of the elements that make Christmas special, whether it's the local tree lighting, whether it's, the homeless coat drive that this YMCA is doing. Yeah, aired on Up TV, and Up TV has all 3 seasons now.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We've been to some really amazing small towns. I discovered there is a North Pole, Alaska. There really is a town called North Pole.
And you went?
We went.
Took a crew? And
yes. to North Pole, Alaska. We flew to Fairbanks, Alaska first, and then you drive to North Pole, and we went to the post office in North Pole that gets all of Santa's letters.
Oh, I love it. That's so fun. And I mentioned the first book that you wrote, which was really more of an autobiography of you and your career, and I guess a memoir. You're so young to write your memoir, but
right.
I love that you're able to do that. But then you also have written children's books. So which one came first?
This one came in 2019.
Okay, so this is not a Christmas book, but this is called One More Hug. And your illustrator is amazing.
Great.
How did you get connected?
So both of these books are with Simon & Schuster and their Aladdin Books division, which is their kids' books division. And this is a fun story. After Faith in the Spotlight came out, which is, like you said, sort of my self-help guide book for young people that are believers and want to maintain their values in the industry, I went and visited with a children's book publisher, and she said, bring your ideas. And so I brought all these ideas to her office. I did not have a daughter at the time, and I had all these like girl power, hero, superwoman ideas. And she listened to all of them. Her name's Karen. And she went, okay, that's great, Megan, but how's your family? Tell me how the boys are. And I told her the story of Chase, who is now a 7th grader. Chase was 5 at the time, and he was really struggling with anxiety of getting on the school bus. And he'd run back to me for, one more hug, Mama, one more hug. And like the doors are getting ready to close and the bus driver's honking the horn. And he'd be like, one more hug, and get on the bus. And I told Karen that story, and she said, Megan, that's your kid's book.
That's your book.
One More Hug.
And that's where One More Hug came from.
And then she matched me with Hiroe Nakata, who has illustrated both books. She lives in Japan. I've never met her. I would love to someday. We just communicate by email. I would send her the verbiage, the words, and she would send me back illustrations, and I would go, that's perfect.
Oh, they're precious. Yeah.
She's amazing.
Yeah, so good.
Really
and then
good.
This is the Christmas book. It is called The Magic of Small Town Christmas. So this must have come after the television series.
Yes. Came after the television series. When I was talking to kids about my TV show, I thought, how could I put this down at their level?
Yeah.
And I thought it would be really sweet to do a kid's book. And it's just a, compilation of all the sweet traditions in our small towns. And a little bit of Franklin is definitely in there. Franklin, Tennessee.
Oh, good. I love that. Well, these are beautiful, and I appreciate you sharing them with us so much. And then there's another one on the way next year.
Yes.
Is it Christmas themed?
It is. It's called The True Gifts of Christmas, and it will be a coffee table book. I'm trying to merge the secular and the religious, because a lot of times people say, oh, Christmas has gotten so commercialized.
Right.
Well, really, a lot of the traditions, whether it's stockings, Santa Claus himself being based on a real man named St. Nicholas, angels, red cardinals, candles, a lot of our Christmas carols have Christian roots.
Right.
And so I break it down and just work through it. And it's the hope that maybe families can make it like a fun little teachable lesson every night.
I feel like what you just said kind of encompasses what your career has been, trying to blend the secular along with your faith and bring them together, right?
Yes.
And kind of be able to be a person of faith in a secular world.
Build a bridge between
absolutely.
the two. Connect the dots.
Really and then do you ever perform? Like, I know that you have fun with the guitar and sing a little here and there, but is that on a bucket list? I mean, I feel like you've accomplished and checked off so many things that were probably on young Megan's bucket list, but are there other things that have to do with performing?
You know what's fun, Jennifer, is both my young kids, Ketcher and Capri, take guitar lessons at school, and that has caused me to pick up my guitar again and write. So I've been writing a little bit more and writing with some folks in the industry. So for fun, yes, just because it brings me joy, but it would be neat to continue in that way. I actually did just write a song for another Christmas movie that I'm a part of. It's called Chili for Christmas. And if you know Corey Lee Barker, he's amazing. He's like Mr. Christmas music man. We wrote a song for that movie. So hopefully that'll come out maybe next year.
So potentially there's the potential of being in a movie, putting music that you wrote in the movie, and then maybe a children's book about the movie. I mean, I'm just like thinking about all your many talents. Yeah. Like you could do it all.
It's just fun. It's what brings you joy, right?
Yeah.
And I tell people, even if it doesn't become a big hit or a big deal, if it's fun, just do it.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Then you're just enjoying life.
Well, you're delightful. And I'm so happy for you and just all your success and the way that you've been able to blend so many of your passions and things that you love and raise your beautiful family and still have your cool job in New York, but live in our little hometown here just south of Nashville. And it's pretty special.
Thank you. Well, I should be asking you for advice because your sons are older than mine, and I have a 13-year-old. So I need to ask you as they get older,
Girl, we will
how do you
talk.
support their
know.
dreams?
I don't know if we have the answers or not.
You do it so well.
I definitely am an advocate for doing that. So that's a good thing. Thanks, Megan.
Thank you, Jennifer.